Hi everyone. I had meant to film this Q&A before I went on vacation so that I could have it go up without having to worry about it, but due to all of the family stuff that wound up going on the week before I left, I just didn't get a chance, so I thought I still have got all the questions. I'm going to film it today and just give you some updated answers to some of the Qs. I have them on my phone from Instagram, and I am just going to see if I can get through all of them. I don't have a shit ton of them, so I should be able to get through them all in a reasonable amount of time. First question, which houseplant is your favorite? I actually really like this one behind me. This is my biggest bird's nest fern. I have 3 of them, and of the 3 of them, this big one that I got from IKEA is probably one of my favorites. I would suggest that the other favorites that I have, or the other favorite one I have, is probably my watermelon stilt, just because I think it's cool looking. But I mean, don't ask me to name a favorite. It's like naming my favorite kid. I don't have a favorite kid, but I do have a favorite pet. I might have a favorite pet. Can you guess in the comments of my cat Lou, my cat Odin, and my dog Layla, which one of those is my favorite? Let me know in the comments. I'll let you know if somebody gets it right. What's your go-to tea flavor? I love white tea. My favorite tea for the longest time was iced. It was an iced Starbucks white tea with no sweetener. They stopped carrying that. Now, my favorite white tea is the Buddha blend from David's Tea, iced. I like it iced more than I like it hot. I like it hot as well. Some like it hot, but I really like it iced. It's green and white tea mixed together with some peach in it. Very yummy. For hot tea, I would probably say my favorite is Earl Grey of any sort. I love me some Earl Grey, no sweetener. But I also really love this tea by, I think it's called Harney and Sons. I talked about it in my recent favorites video. It's called Paris, and it's a black blend of teas. Very yummy. That one's also excellent iced. Sunny, who usually calls tea dirty water, loves the iced Paris tea with a squirt of vanilla syrup in it. This is a fun one. Plan or trend you want to see go, and one you want to see come back. Okay. Plan or trend I want to see go. I probably should have thought about this one in advance. Okay, so the plan or trend I want to see go, and I don't know if I want to see it go necessarily, it kind of amuses me when I see it, is there's a big trend I've noticed for neutral stuff, like browns, taupes, those kinds of colors, like earth tone neutrals. I love those colors. I think they're really pretty, and I do use them from time to time. What I think sometimes throws me is, and this is no one person. I have seen multiple people do this on Instagram because they're doing reels and they want the reel and they filter the reel with kind of a beigey filter using beigey stuff. And so it's all just a lot of beige. And it's not just the planner world. There's other places where it's beige on beige on beige. Beige clothes, beige, that pampas grass shit, beige, fucking everything. And then there's a beige filter thrown on top. And I like color. I like color. I also like neutral shit, but I like color. So I guess that's the other thing, is I would just love fucking splashes of color. And if you want to see some splashes of color, go check out A Little Spark on Instagram. That's my friend Keisha, who lives here in the Colorado, Denver metro like I do. She uses so much, so does Cricut Paper Co. Saturated, really vibrant, bright colors. Love those. And if I'm ever feeling beiged out, I'll just go to one of their accounts and kind of soak it up. Do what you want. I'm just saying that I would like to see more color in the mix of the beige landscape. I may have missed this, but what were the results of Layla's DNA test? So she is indeed a lab mix. She's got some lab in her. She's got some pit bull in her. She's got some, what is that one? Corso something in her. She's got some, it's a whole bunch. She's a mutt. She's a mutt. None of her results, that's the reasons I'm having trouble remembering all of them, is because none of her results went over 50%. She was a whole grab bag trail mix of a dog, and we absolutely love her. California or Colorado? Colorado, I think. I really like it here. I like the weather. The weather is more intense than California. We just had a couple of really very heavy stormy days here of summer storms. and the snow is getting used to, and the wind sometimes takes some getting used to. But I really like the seasons, as opposed to California's sort of 3 intermingled seasons of cold, hot, and fire. Now, fires happen here as well, but maybe it was just living in Napa. One of the things Jess and I loved so much about living in Napa was how beautiful it was, and being able to drive up valley and see the vineyards and just how pretty it was there. And it felt in the last few years that with all the fires and everything else, we just didn't get to have that kind of experience as often as we liked. And with how expensive it is there, and how few shopping here is better, and the shopping wasn't great in Napa. So like, there were aspects of it we really loved, but one of the reasons moving to Denver was actually, I think, more refreshing than we expected, was a lot of the things we really loved about Napa were starting to get outweighed by the things we didn't love so much about it. Now, I've lived in other parts of California. Of everywhere I lived in California, Napa was my favorite place to live. To be fair, I've never lived in Southern California. I grew up in like the San Joaquin Valley, so Northern California, but in like the agricultural part of it. And then I went to college in Davis and lived in that area, and then moved to Napa. So I've never lived in, like, except for a short time when I was a kid, in the actual Bay Area, as opposed to the North Bay or right up on the edge of the East Bay. So I haven't lived everywhere in California, but of the places I've lived, I think I like Colorado better. The only thing that would make me happier is if my family was here, but I don't think that's going to happen. But my family's mostly not in California anymore either, so there you go. Jesse Baldo asks, what's for dinner? Tonight, chicken gnocchi soup. Allegedly. Odin is trying to get in. I just let him in, so if I get kittis interruptus, then you'll understand. He is a kitten, and he has entered deeply into full-blown menace phase. Literally just walked under my tripod. Now you can see how big he is. Look at this big man. Look at this big man. Okay, bye now. Back to the questions. A deeper one. Advice on staying positive and motivated with health issues. Just diagnosed with breast cancer. I have no motivation to be creative. You really inspire me. Well, first and foremost, I am so sorry about your diagnosis. That really sucks. And I will keep my fingers crossed that you go through your treatments, however that looks, and that you recover well and without incident. As for staying motivated with health problems, I don't know how much of this I can actually answer, because first and foremost, it is super okay to just sit in the sadness and the feels that you have from getting diagnosed with something. Like, that's not an easy thing to swallow. Like, when I found out I had PKD, my dad had just died like 6 months previous, and I found out I had the thing he had, and it hit me really hard, even though I wasn't experiencing any health problems at that point. I only found out about it because I was like specifically going to find out, because my dad had died. And it hit me super hard. And over the years, as my health has declined, whenever I like either get gout or get something new that's related to it, or I have a decline, I go through it again. And I've learned that trying to push those feelings aside or accelerate your way through them without like really processing them, it doesn't do you any favors, because it just bites you in the ass eventually. So first and foremost, be okay with feeling the feels. You don't have to be okay with the feels, but just be okay with feeling them, because it's natural. The second thing is to make it as easy as possible. If there is something that you really love doing, but you don't feel motivated to do right now because of the diagnosis, if it's painting, I'm gonna use painting as an example, but you can use this with any form of creativity. For me, might be watercolor painting, right? I would limit myself to just a palette I know I love and some paper, and I would just keep it out where I normally would notice it, with a couple of glasses to add some water to, so that whenever I thought I might have a time to just sit down and just fuck around, that I could do it without any barriers in the way, removing those barriers to it. And sometimes the barrier can be having too much stuff, so that's why limiting it can be real helpful. But that's one way to motivate yourself, or get, like, maybe not motivate, but like inspire some creativity. Another thing I do sometimes when I just don't feel up to being creative is I'll look for inspiration. I will look at things that inspire me, whether it's pictures of nature, or whether it's videos of artists working, or whether it's scrolling Instagram and looking at ceramicists or something. Even if I'm not going to be making ceramics, seeing other people be creative can be very inspiring to me if I'm in the right headspace. Sometimes if I'm not in the right headspace, seeing other people being creative just makes me feel bad that I'm not being creative. But ultimately, I think my two biggest tips would be to feel your feels and be okay with feeling them, and making it easy as fuck to actually sit down and be creative when you get a moment. And that hopefully can get the ball rolling. How do I like my Casper mattress? Is it worth the splurge? We love our Casper mattress. We have the Casper, oh fuck, which one do we have? I should look it up because I ordered it. Casper. I mean, I called, I did it over the phone, but, or maybe I bought it in person. I don't remember. What did I do? Nova Hybrid Snow is what we got. We got the snow add-on, which is the thing that kind of makes you feel cooler because Jesse is a fucking furnace. Now, it doesn't feel icy cold, but so I don't really know how, but I haven't had any problems with him overheating the bed. It's not cold enough that I would be able to say, yeah, it's super chilly. I don't really notice it, but I also don't notice Jesse overheating me, and we don't sleep with the AC on most nights. So yeah, I love it though. I find it to be super comfortable. It's not the softest mattress we've ever owned, and it's not the firmest. It's nice and in the middle, which is good because Jess and I have very different ideas as to what we think constitutes a comfortable mattress. I am of the cloud family and he is of the board family, and so we tried to pick something in the middle, and this seems to fit the bill. We also have their adjustable bed frame, and we also love that. Hashtag not sponsored. But I will say we did buy it when there was a good sale going on, and we had the luxury of being able to go to a Casper store at the mall here where we were able to negotiate them some more discounts. But keep your eye out. I'm not the most discerning of mattress people, but it has been comfortable for me, especially with how shitty my kidneys feel at night. Aw, somebody said, not a cue. I love all the content you create and you inspire me daily. You're a great human. Thanks. How do you like Colorado? I kind of answered this one already, but I guess I'll add that there is an element to it that we hadn't really started to explore last year, but now having Layla, we've really begun to explore, and that is going to some of the outdoor stuff. We actually live quite close to a state park in Colorado called Cherry Creek State Park. It's a big reservoir, but it has like, you know, an off-leash dog park with a stream, and it's got all sorts of shit there. And we have been going there. We bought the yearly pass for like the family car and the off-leash area. We ordered a inflatable kayak we're going to start taking out. The fact that we have gotten more outdoors time here than ever did in California, even though we also lived in California, but like, for example, the lake that we lived near in Napa, Lake Berryessa, was a good hour drive up the mountain, windy roads, and then the access to the lake was really a pain in the ass. Getting to the reservoir here, 10 minutes. And maybe that's also a sign of where we live, like the shopping, but we just love it. So yeah, we're really enjoying it here, and we are very glad we made the move. Best way to support content creators: watch the whole ad, click on the links, reshares. Well, it depends on where you're at, but all of those things work. I would say that for me, if you're looking for ways to support me, my personal thing that I constantly am trying to do is to get stuff shared, because that I tend to have very loyal, this is going to sound so fucking inside baseball wanky, but like my subscribers tend to be fairly loyal. A lot of YouTubers, for example, have trouble with their subscriber to new viewer ratio being very heavy in the new viewer and not in the subscriber, which means that they're constantly churning through new people coming in and they want to up their subscriber watch. I have the opposite problem. I tend to have a very high subscriber ratio of watching, but not so high of new people. I don't get recommended very often by the algorithm, and I know that there's plenty of reasons for that, including me, you know, not being trendy or whatever, and I'm fine with that. But if you want to know, for me personally, the biggest thing would be to share. But it just depends on the person. Like, watching the ad, yeah, I mean, I don't watch the ads because I have YouTube Premium, which I highly 10 out of 10 recommend. But if you watch as much YouTube as I do and you like to listen to it in the background. But yeah, like any little thing you can do for a creator, if you really want to support them, like the most obvious way to support them is to do something like buy their merch if they have merch, or if they have an Etsy shop, or subscribe to their Patreon or to their YouTube channel if that's something you can afford to do. But if you can't afford to do any of those things, and there's nothing wrong with that, or that's just not something you want to spend your money on, then yeah, watching the ad, using the affiliate links, and resharing are all great ways to help. I appreciate you asking. Did I keep up with paragraph a day morning pages? No. I have learned that I'm not a journaler. I don't think I'm a journaler. Writing down any form of journaling, it feels like an obligation more than something that's helpful to me. So I stopped. RJ said it's okay, so can I get the moth plushie? That is from my kid. RJ is terrified of moths. Sunny really wanted a moth plushie because Sunny loves moths. RJ so anyway, we'll move forward from that. I'll go talk to them about it later because this was sent back in July and I haven't heard about it since then. How do you feel about grieving? I feel I grieve the person I was before my illness. I could do an entire video. I could do an entire series about grief and my complicated relationship with it. I have never been somebody who is particularly healthy with how I grieve. I have lost, when I lost my parents, everything else, I tend to be somebody who pushes things down and finds the productive way to go on with something. And while that can pass the time and feel good for me in that sense, it always bites me in the ass. So I don't know if I have the best advice for this. However, I will say that grieving the person you were before you got sick, I totally feel that. I constantly have this tension in my mind between what I think I should be able to do and what I can't do anymore. No matter how much I think I've reconciled it, then I decline some more into kidney failure and the whole cycle starts over again. Again, like I said in a previous answer, letting yourself feel the feelings is really important. And I cannot emphasize how helpful therapy can be with this, to help you process some of this with somebody who is kind but also neutral, because sometimes it can be difficult to process those sorts of feelings with somebody who has agency or buy-in into your life. Sometimes they don't believe you, sometimes they don't get it, sometimes they overly get it, sometimes you don't want to hear somebody that you love continually asking you how you are. Going to a therapist is usually a great way to, or at least for me, I've found, is a way to sort of circumvent some of the baggage that comes with opening up to family. Not that I don't think you should if you have trusted family members, but I think getting a neutral party in to help you with that can be really helpful. But just understand that it is normal, and that while you're grieving the things you can't do anymore, embrace the things you can do, because sometimes that's the only thing that gets me through. Can you share more of your digital planning? Is that something you're continuing? Fun fact, I actually have not been using my digital planner that I set up because I never got through the HB90 system for this quarter. Things were just too chaotic, and then my family life went to shit. So I am just sort of half-assing my way through work using ClickUp and my bullet journal to make lists. And I'm going to give it a try again in the last quarter of the year once I get to September and actually get everything set up. Like between the buried under freelance that I am right now, the water leak in my basement, the kids heading off to California, and then the shit going on with my brother-in-law and my grandmother, which you can watch the last two Plan With Me's if you need some updates on those situations. It's just been... I have not been able to. So no, but I will share it once I do get going with it. It's not that I don't like it. It's I literally just have not been able to focus that way. How do you feel about the new Lord of the Rings show coming out? Will it do the books justice? LOL. Okay, fantasy fans. And I know I've got some of you because I am a fantasy fan. And by the way, House of the Dragon premieres this Sunday and I'm fucking excited. I'm probably going to watch the Lord of the Rings series. I don't know how much I'm going to watch it, because fun fact, The Lord of the Rings is not one of my favorite fantasy series. I really dislike Tolkien's writing style. Now the movies, the Peter Jackson movies, I heartily enjoyed. The cartoon movies, I don't know if you remember those Hobbit and like the Rankin and Bass style movies from the early 80s with the terrifying ass Gollum. I used to watch those as a kid too. But the books, there was something about his writing style that just did not gel with me. And so I never got into it. So I have the distinct opportunity to be somebody who understands fantasy tropes, understands the basics behind the Lord of the Rings series, and is pretty well versed in other fantasy. But I'm going into this Lord of the Rings show with no real expectations and no real anticipation. Like, I'm not worried about it. I know some people are really scared that they're going to blow it or that it's going to suck. People are trying to pit it against House of the Dragon, which they're completely fucking different things. So like for one, House of the Dragon isn't going to be an adult show, and Lord of the Rings, the new show, is supposed to be family friendly. I have no idea. But I will say generally, as a book reader of many books, and as somebody who has been burned before on adaptations that don't meet my expectations, because I am a Stephen King fan, you have a plethora to choose from. I'm going into this and to House of the Dragon, just like I've been going into the Wheel of... I know there were a lot of people who bitched about the Wheel of Time show being different than the books. I go into them as different entities. They are not the same as the book, because how can they be? How can they be the same as what you thought of when you read the book? They have to entertain differently. It's a different medium. It's a different creative team. It's, you know, it's just not worth it for me to be super like invested in whether something is book accurate or not. Like, I watched Game of Thrones, and as a longtime book reader, there were times where I was like, huh? But then I just let it go. Like, okay, the last season, my issue with it wasn't the storyline, even though some of it kind of seemed a little hokey to me, but like, the issue with it was just the pacing. I'm usually fairly laid back when it comes to adaptations. I go in with very few expectations. Now, I don't feel that way about House of the Dragon because I've been like fucking immersed in everything that's going on. So maybe that's how you feel with the Rings of Power show. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to probably watch it, but I have no idea what to expect. If I were not heavy-handed on my pens, what would I choose? I'll probably say pens. I'll be real. Like, I like the pens I'll use. I would probably go with like a .005 or like a tiny, tiny, tiny felt tip more often because I really like how those look, but I tend to split those nibs with too much pressure. So I would tend to, I only use them for like drawing and line work because I'm a little lighter handed with that. But honestly, I would likely do that more often, but there probably wouldn't be a lot in terms of changes there. I got another question about how do you like living in Denver? I've already answered that. But the second one, I've noticed a lack of diversity in Fort Collins. Is there diversity in your area? Yes. I live in Aurora, which is technically a suburb of Denver, the biggest suburb of Denver. But if Denver wasn't here, then Aurora would be the city, and all of the other small towns around it would be the suburbs of Aurora. It's that big. It's also extremely diverse. My kids go to, or now RJ is the only one going to high school now, go to one of the most diverse high schools in the state. From everything I understand about Aurora, I think there's 75 different languages or something like that are spoken here. It's very diverse. How do you create a good work-life balance wearing all of the hats you wear? I don't. Simple answer. Balance is not something I seem to ever manage. I strive to kind of keep things more in harmony with each other because there are times like right now where I'm under extreme deadlines and so I have a lot of work to do. But other times where my kids really need me or my family needs me, like 3 weeks ago when I did have the deadlines, but I was busy with other things. So just trying to kind of keep an overview of things and sort of see how they play out. But it's really not something that I am great at. The biggest tip I have for you is to really make a list of everything going on in your life, all of the things you're responsible for, all of the people, blah, blah, blah. Odin is making some interesting noises. And then really like prioritize it and then try and keep your eye on like the top group of things, you know? And don't worry about the rest because you can only do so much. And rest should be somewhere on that list. Do I have formal art training or am I self-taught? Both, actually. I have taken art classes in high school and in college and in like community settings, and I also am self-taught. I would suggest that when it comes to sketching, drawing from life, and certain watercolor techniques, those I have been trained in. And then a lot of the other ones, and lettering especially, is self-taught. I learned most of that on the job at Trader Joe's. A lot of my doodling skills, a lot of my lettering skills, and a lot of my like workflow skills with art I learned while working at Trader Joe's. But some of the basics, especially when it comes to things like perspective and shading and line work and contour drawing and all of those things like art, like basic art skills, I did learn those taking classes and have just refreshed myself as time has gone on. Advice for establishing a regular creative practice, please. Okay. This one can be difficult. Now I'm gonna go back to one of those previous answers where I said to remove barriers and make it simple. Pick the thing you want to work on, limit your supplies, put them where they are very easy to use, remove as many barriers as you can. For me, the way I kind of eked into it originally was I started decorating my planner because I felt like, well, if I didn't have any time to spare for creativity, then by decorating my planner, I was being creative and productive. But I also recognize it's kind of a toxic mindset to have. So if that's what you need, something to like be able to say, okay, I'm doing it, but like being creative by learning how to decorate cookies, but at least you're making cookies for someone to eat. If you have to do that to establish a creative practice, then do it, but try not to let that rule your life. Ultimately, I would say that the way to kind of keep it going regularly is to remember that inspiration is not necessary to be creative. As a matter of fact, a professional working artist cannot rely on inspiration to get their work done, because sometimes, especially if you're freelancing or doing commissioned work, you don't have time to be inspired. You just have to learn to do it. So maybe pick a challenge. The 100-day project was really great for me, even though I didn't finish it. There was a point where I did, I think, 50 something a couple years back, where I was painting. I would blob some paint on a paper and then turn it into a flower with limited supplies. Setting parameters around something with very basic limitations, so don't get too complicated at first. Just make it really easy. Give yourself like a 10-minute time limit for a daily challenge every day. That's one way to get it going. And then let's say you get into it, you might go for longer than that. But the key is that you don't want to wait for the inspiration. You don't want to wait for the creativity to come to you. You have to go to it. And it's like fake it till you make it. Eventually it gets a little bit more natural. But sometimes it's a constant process to keep reminding yourself, especially if you have a lot of other things. It was a lot easier to be creative when I was a teenager and didn't have any responsibilities. With kids, pets, being ill, all these other things, there's so many things vying for my attention. Even with work, and as a person who does creative work, there's all sorts of administrative things that pull my attention. So having to separate some time and making it so that when that time comes, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to set up. I can just sit down and do it. That's the easiest way for me, at least, to ease into it. Have I ever regretted sharing your life and family with the internet? Yes. Not very often, though. I actually really like it. I find it very connecting, but sometimes I regret it when I don't know how to communicate something happening and people know something's happening. Or like in this previous situation with my brother-in-law, I was trying very hard to be respectful, but still share what was going on in my life it's hard for me to moderate what I say. I'm not good at it. In case you couldn't tell, I'm not good at moderating what I say. I'm not good at putting boundaries or limits around what I say and how I talk. And I try to be as uncensored as I can, but at the same time, my life is not just my life. I have people in my life that did not choose to put their lives on the internet, and learning that balance and learning how to can be uncomfortable for me sometimes. Sometimes I fuck it up. And those are the times I tend to regret it, because it's not my life I'm stressed about sharing. It's when I have either crossed boundaries or don't know how to keep things private. And that tension can be hard for me sometimes. When it comes to shitty people or whatever, I don't give a fuck. There have been a couple of times in my time on the internet where I have been directly targeted for some pretty mean messages and things like that. And that wasn't fun, but thankfully it has not been very often. Fingers crossed. Knock on IKEA wood. Love your content, Cindy. How do you hold yourself accountable if the goal planners help? Thanks. Thanks, for one. And for two, yes, the goal planners, the Moxie Life has been really great for me this year. I cannot wait till the end of the year to really give a good assessment of why I felt like I was more successful with the Moxie Life than I have been with the Cultivate What Matters Power Sheets. You guys had asked me to make that video, why I picked one over the other. Spill the tea. There's no real tea. There's a reason I think that it's working for me, and at the time, I wasn't sure. There were some kind of things I was thinking, but not really clear on them. And as the year has progressed, I've gotten more and more clear. So I will be able to make that video with a lot more firm statements, and I'm excited about it. But that's helped. Having a planner with goals incorporated, that's been really helpful in keeping me accountable. But I'm also the kind of person who is not great at holding themselves accountable. I need outside accountability, which is why working for myself can be so hard sometimes. The person who keeps me the most accountable is Jesse. I have to tell him basically everything I need to be doing, and he kind of keeps me, he does it in a very non-invasive way, and I appreciate that. But yeah, the planner absolutely helps. Okay, last question. Are you someone who will keep reading a book even if you're not enjoying it? Also, hi, Cindy. No, but I do have exceptions. Let me explain. Life's too fucking short to read books that you don't like. Now, the exceptions to that. A, if it's a Stephen King book, because I have found in my experience he is a slow starter, and often I will struggle with one of his books for the first time reading it, and then get past a certain point and be like, fuck yeah. One of my favorite books of all time is Bag of Bones. It's a Stephen King book. The first time I tried to read it, I couldn't get past the beginning chunk of it. And so I put it down, came back to it, and pushed through, and it became my favorite book, or one of my favorite books. So, and that's a specific circumstance. I just know this about myself and with Stephen King. But with most fiction books and most nonfiction books, if I'm just not feeling it, then I have other shit to read. I have plenty of books to read to not waste time reading shit I don't give a fuck about. The other exception, and this is very specific to the Wheel of Time series. Longtime Wheel of fans know that if you were reading the books when they were coming out, there is a section that is referred to in the fandom as the slog. It's a chunk of books where the storyline, it kind of slows down. And there's so many moving parts, and it was a little excruciating to get through. There are parts that made it worth it, but there were other parts where it was like, fuck, dude. And when the books were coming out once a year or once every 2 years, it just sucked later in the series. So I was like, at this point, I have devoted so much of my life to this. I had been reading it since I was a teenager. I'm not giving up. And then it got awesome, and then it closed with a bang. So that's the other exception. But that was specific to that series. And now it sounds like my lunch is here. So I am going to wrap this up. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Another question you have for me, or you can answer to me one of the questions that were interesting to you in here, especially this, are you someone who will keep reading a book if you don't like it? You can answer that one. How do you hold yourself accountable? Tips on establishing a creative practice. Answer one of those questions in the comments if you don't have one for me. If you do have one for me, I will do my best to answer it after this video airs. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, peace.